Hey there, Alex Kidman. And I guess I should start off by pointing out that these are not in fact my hands. Samsung doesn't quite like me well enough to hand over a Galaxy Z Fold 2 just yet, but I am waiting. But ahead of the formal reveal of the Galaxy Z Fold 2, not that there was too much to reveal with Samsung showing off its second generation foldable phone at the Galaxy Note 20 launch, and frankly, a plethora of leaks being pretty much 100% on the money, Samsung did brief a number of journalists, including myself, on the specifics of its new foldable and where it sees the market for such a device. Just like the original Galaxy Fold, it's pretty hard to look past its asking price though. $2,999 in Australia, different money overseas of course. In Australia, it'll go on sale on the 25th of September in either Mystic Bronze or Mystic Black colours. And look, in 2020, it's very hard to ask $3,000 for any phone. So this is very much a phone for the 1%, for those looking for an absolute luxury, absolute premium option. And of course, that's what the original Galaxy Fold was meant to offer up as well. So where do I think it works and where does it need work? So what's on the good side? Well, look, they fixed the external screen. This is probably the biggest part of it. I wasn't the only one who didn't particularly like that tiny screen on the outside of the original Galaxy Fold. So the switch to a full 6.2-inch display on the front solves pretty much every complaint I had there. It goes from being a notification space that's really only kind of partially useful as a phone to a space that's entirely workable as a phone in its own right. And along with that, of course, they also fixed the internal screen. So larger is always going to be better in a foldable in my view, especially at these kind of price points. And the inclusion of a 7.6-inch display with essentially no bezels goes a long way to making the Galaxy Z Fold 2 a more desirable phone. That 120Hz display is also great to have, although disappointingly you can only select it in dynamic mode, so you can't force it into 120Hz mode all the time. You can just say, hey, I'd like you to use 120Hz when you think it's the right time to use it. It's also really starting to fulfill the productivity promise of foldables. And look, for a lot of folks, the allure of a foldable phone was always about that showing off factor. Not just that you had the raw cash to afford one, but the ability to fold your phone in or out in front of a crowd. However, look, it's 2020. We shouldn't be meeting in crowds, and in any case, it was always a pretty shallow ambition because once you've shown the phone folding and unfolding, then what? And look, this is where I'm really keen on foldable devices, playing more in the productivity space. And Samsung seems to have done some really solid work there in terms of the way that multi-screen works, drag and drop works, and there's some specific implementation for Microsoft apps such as Word and Excel. Frankly, I'm a little bit surprised there isn't an S Pen popping out of this thing. Would I in fact preferentially use the Galaxy Z Fold 2 as a straight notebook replacement? No, not quite yet, but it feels like it's a really important step in the right direction to that kind of device. There's also just, frankly, some pretty cool engineering in this phone. And okay, you're not actually really going to look at the mechanisms behind, say, the new sweeper hinge on the Galaxy Z Fold 2. But look, that doesn't mean I can't appreciate good engineering where it's present. And speaking of good engineering, I really like the hideaway hinges thing and the fact that you can get them in multiple colours. Now, this isn't coming to every market, although Samsung's release seems to suggest that we will see it in Australia. Maybe I'm just a sucker for a phone with a blue hinge, but I also figure, even though it's a really small thing, when you're paying $3,000 for a phone, a little personalisation, a little bit of choice of your own goes a long way. So what's not so good? Alright, first and foremost, it's a pretty stupid name. Look, I'm sorry, Samsung, but did you really need an extra letter in there? No, you didn't. It's also a little bit confusing on the camera front, basically because Samsung can make better cameras than this. Look, it's neat. You no longer have that interior bezel bulge to accommodate the cameras on the way you did on the original Galaxy Fold, and I kind of like the idea of using the phone half folded so that it is in effect its own tripod. But when the Galaxy Fold, last year's model, was announced, it had effectively the best cameras in the range because it was announced at the same time as last year's Galaxy S phones. However, the Galaxy Z Fold 2, it's still Samsung's most expensive handset, but in camera capability terms, it's actually outclassed by the Note 20 Ultra, a phone which is substantially cheaper. And I just figured, look, if you're going to charge me $3,000, put everything and the best of everything you can in there. I'm sure there's probably some design and specification reasons why they couldn't, but it still feels a little bit disappointing not to be getting the best of everything in the most expensive phone. And it just, it leaves me wondering why, beyond, of course, the fact that it folds up. I still think this is a pretty big dent in its premium price argument. You've also got to look at what you don't get, because there are still compromises in play. The Galaxy Z Fold 2 is dual SIM, but it's actually just single nano SIM and eSIM. And eSIM is cool technology, but it can be a bit of a pain to change carriers, for example, or to get configured in the first place. There's either 256GB or 512GB of storage space. Samsung Australia hasn't been entirely clear on which model we'll see here, but my money's on it being the 256GB model. But either way, it's fixed storage. There's no microSD expansion, which just feels limiting for a productivity device. There's no in-display fingerprint sensor. Samsung makes some of the best of these for its other phones, but you don't get one on this phone. Instead, it's a side-mounted fingerprint sensor. Now, Samsung talks about the phone's ability to repel droplets of water, but that's masking the fact that there's no IP-rated water resistant. Now, I totally appreciate many of these things are significant technical challenges to overcome, and others are choices on Samsung's part when building up a full feature set, but look, I think you do have to place them and you do have to compare them against traditional premium smartphones where a lot, if not all, of those features are utterly standard. And of course, you've got to come back to how much it costs. That $2,999 price point is not cheap, and it's one that most of the market will simply never meet. So what's my overall verdict? Well, look, the Galaxy Z Fold 2, or Z Fold 2, depending on where you are on the planet, isn't for everyone. Look, at that asking price, it's not even for 5% of the smartphone market, because the price point alone marks this out as an absolutely aspirational level premium luxury phone. However, I do think, for the most part, based on what they've demoed to me, based on the specs, Samsung's made most of the right moves with the second generation Fold. It's fixed up the terrible external display, it's expanded the internal screen, there's more of a focus on productivity, and there's more of a focus on making it a more usable tablet and enjoyable phone in its own right. Now, of course, those are all early observations. I naturally will have to hold my full verdict until Samsung hands one over and I can actually put it through its full external unbiased test paces. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe.